Drew, where'd that come from? Drew, where are you? Drew, talk to me. What's going on? Where'd that come from?
He's outside. He's outside. God.
Hey man, you'll be all right. Here's some real medical.
It's too late. Temu Tactical.
How cheap can we go and still get life-saving equipment? What are the non-negotiables? Man, where are we still wasting our money? Well, today we're gonna be playing with a list of products ranging from $400 ARs to Home Depot gas masks and even $30 Temu plate carriers. But why does this even matter in the first place? Well, because as long as humans exist on Earth, there will be conflict and there will be war. And as long as credit cards exist, families will be burying themselves in debt that will never actually be recovered. And yet, on the other hand, wasting your money on fake tourniquets or $30 Temu plate carriers, they are not just as good. It is not the same as a North American Rescue Cat or a Spiritus plate carrier. So today we're going to be looking at some very ultra cheap equipment as well as some surplus gear that can be purchased at a reasonable price point. So without further ado, urban combat on a budget. All right, if we're actually talking about urban warfare, actual combat, a pistol would have its time and a place, but we really need to start with the rifle itself. It's also probably going to be one of the more expensive items, but we were able to build this base rifle from PSA for about $460. So we bought the upper and the lower separately. Didn't have any of the other accessories like magazine, rear sight, optic light, or any of that. Now, I went with a 16-inch barrel, a Magpul mid-length handguard, and I will say that it still shoots just fine. Now, when it comes to PSA, there's two camps in the firearms industry. People will either tell you it is just as good or it is 100% garbage. I'm here to tell you that it kind of depends on the specific gun that you get. I have about a 50-50 success rate with the PSAs that I have experience with, that I've purchased and shot, which is 4. So with a sample size of 4, 2 have not been good and 2 have been just fine. So if you end up buying a PSA for, again, around 500, 400 bucks, make sure you put some rounds through it and verify that you know what you get. I will say that I was fairly impressed with the build quality of the bolt. Now, you're not getting all of the correct metallurgy that goes into the bolt. It's not a super high-end one, same with the barrel, but the staking on the gas key did look good, and after shooting 500 rounds through this thing, I'm fairly confident to say that this will still function just fine for probably another 1,000 to 2,500 rounds. Now, you need to look out for about that 5,000 round mark on a gun like this, an entry-level price point gun, because at 5,000 rounds, that's where your gas rings on your bolt start to wear out. That's where, if you're cooking your barrel fairly hot, you'll start to see some accuracy start to dip on cheaper barrels like this. If you can get 5,000 rounds out of a $450, $500 PSA, you're doing pretty good. That also steps into the idea that, well, I don't need a gun that's going to last me 2 years of gun fighting in an urban warfare. Maybe, arguably, I just need a gun to get me through that first gunfight until I can get something else issued to me or do a little bit of a battlefield pickup. I'm not sure where I feel about that idea, but this gun does function, it runs just fine. So why are PSAs actually so cheap? Well, it's worth noting that there are lemons that come along with guns like this. If you go buy something like a Colt 6920 and an Aimpoint T2, yes, they do have a failure point. Every machine, every tool has a lifespan. But when you get less expensive parts like this that are not as well tested, you start to find that, hey, this optic or this rifle, this specific one fails at about 10,000 rounds, whereas my buddies failed at 2,000 rounds, whereas someone else has failed at 5,000 rounds. And you don't have a repeatable lifespan as opposed to buying quality, and at least you know, yeah man, I have 200,000 rounds on this T2. It's understandable that it's starting to fail. So when you buy quality, you're also buying mental insurance of the fact that this gun is going to last X amount of time until parts do need to be replaced, and you just don't get that when you buy baseline super cheap stuff. Let's talk about some of the accessories on here. We spent $30, to get a knockoff Surefire light that comes with the tail cap and pressure pad. The brightness comes in at about an original Surefire light, so like the Scout lights, not like a turbo. And the pressure pad, I can tell you right now, the rubber is very poor quality and it's just kind of waiting to fail. But at the moment, it is working. It's just a matter of time until it does not. This Ride-On Optics red dot, I actually have had for a couple of years, and I've had it on a few different guns for a while. And while they're being resold for about $60 on eBay, this thing has been functioning well. Magpul M-Bus rear sight. A downside to this is that it is spring-loaded and it's pretty easy to bump your kit, and then the rear sight is up. And when you actually pull your gun up, man, now it's visually in the way. It's not a make or break, it's just for the price. I'd rather have something that doesn't have a spring under it trying to bump it up. And then the sling itself was $7 off tack swap, one of those old Blue Force gear slings. Now, in the 500 rounds of shooting, I will say that these Amen 2 mags have been okay. There was a moment or two where they wanted to jump out of the magazine more so than a Magpul mag. So when I'm going to actually reload, the rounds wanted to come out of the magazine. They weren't really locked in place, and I had to fix that before throwing the mag back in. The other metal ones, those did not want to hold my bolt open. Now that was when I was racking my charging handle back, as well as when the gun was cycling. So many times I'd have a dead trigger, I'd tap rack, the bolt would still close, and I'd be like, cool, the round is seated, the gun's good to go, pull the trigger, dead trigger again, and then I'd have to fix a whole new problem. So you should note that the biggest failure point on semi or auto feeding firearms is the magazine. So when it comes to a gun like this, where should you save your money and where are non-negotiables? I would say for the gun, a non-negotiable would be quality magazines. Spend an extra $1 or $2 and go get Magpul P mags. That is going to give you less problems in the functioning of the gun itself. Now, with all that being said, let's move on past the rifle and go into plate carriers and kit. Guys, before we move on, we have to thank one of the sponsors that makes content like this possible for you for free every single week. So, Wetworks. Now, I know that this is not incredibly cheap, but it is still, I would consider the perfect blend of not overpriced and still very good quality. So this is the PF6 split rig, which means that I have the buckles right in the middle. I can undo these buckles, splay this open, wear it a little bit more like a backpack, get some air in there, or if I need to lay down on my stomach and shoot long range, I can be far more comfortable just by doing that. I can also make this looser or tighter simply by pulling these straps. So if you're going from, it's cold in the morning and you need a puffy jacket, you can actually loosen those up, and then you start taking your puffy jacket off and you can cinch it down a little bit tighter. Now, with this specific rig, I'm able to hold 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 mags, 2 of which are 20 round mags. I could even throw another full 30 round mag in here. And I added some of these pouches on here, but the fact that it's all MOLLE on the outside means that you can totally customize it. So what I've done is I've added a rangefinder pouch over to this side. I have my night vision plus extra batteries here. With the Velcro on the back side of the split rig, I have a dangler, and in here I could throw, it's fairly empty. I have a map and I have a compass and a notebook and pens. I could even pull some of those items out and throw binoculars in there if I needed, replace it with the rangefinder, which could host, frags or anything else that I might find on my own. And then over on this side, I have my 2 20 round mags in case I am laying down and going prone. I have a multi-tool over here, and then I have water with the ability to plug into a gas mask, and then I also have my Canon Provisions water purification tabs inside of this pouch as well. You can set this up any way that you want, but the other thing that's rad about a rig like this is there's a ton of open space on your back. So if you want to throw a backpack on here, you need to sit in a car for an extended period of time, it's very functional and it's fast and it's very versatile. You can size it up and down depending on what you're wearing. So I know that it is not super Temu budget, but for the price, it's really impressive how you can build out a rig like this, customize it just for you. All right, so as far as kit goes, there's a couple ways that we could take this. We could go the $30 Temu Tactical JPC knockoff, or we could go something that's actually surplus and spend $55 and get a TAPS rig from Venture Surplus, which is where I got this one. There are pros and cons to each, but I will say that eventually, even if you're trying to do it on a budget, I would really advise you to try and have both a slick-ish plate carrier and a chest rig. It just gives you the freedom to be able to wear armor and put a chest rig over the top, or just wear the armor, or just wear the chest rig. But you may be looking at the chest rig and thinking to yourself, dude, all you got on here is 6 mags, which is a basic loadout plus the 7th, which would be in your rifle. And you may be thinking, like a lot of people do, well, if you don't have a compass and a map and a fire starting kit and a radio and all those other things, then you have no point in trying to step off and actually do anything with your ammo. And I hear you, but I would actually argue the other side first. If you are on a budget, you have no point in stepping off and going anywhere if you don't at least have a minimum loadout of 7 mags and probably some more in a backpack too. So if your goal is a budget, starting with something like this, which would just be holding 6+ mags, is a great way to begin. Now, if your goal was to be able to carry a little bit more equipment without spending money on extra pouches that kind of customizes that rig, or a plate carrier, dude, you can go very simplified and get a backpack that you already own and start throwing some of those items in there. Now, what is it that you're actually gonna be carrying? That's up to you, but let me show you a few of the things that I've carried to try and bring the price down while still holding on to some of those capabilities. All right, first and foremost, range finders are incredibly valuable for a plethora of reasons. And if you don't have a range finder, you could go get a range card like this one from Cana Provisions. You could also go get some from Subcheck Security. And essentially all that you're doing here is looking at some of the options here. So I have a car, I have a man, I have a stop sign. You put the string in your mouth and you hold it at 18 inches away, and you're just visualizing that man is at the 1 line or the 6 line or the 9 line, and you're able to tell. It's not gonna be perfect, but I'm assuming that this guy is between 3 and 350 yards. And that's pretty incredible. So being able to gauge distances off of a very inexpensive tool, I believe these are around $20, quite a bit cheaper than a rangefinder. Now, what a rangefinder does do for you is give you magnification capabilities. And you could still go out and buy an $80 set of new or even cheaper used binoculars. And now I'm getting 8 times magnification. I may not have the same clarity or the same field of view, but because I don't have any magnification on my rifle, because I'm trying to stay inexpensive, I still have a pair of binos that has maybe a lifetime warranty, or if they do break, man, I bought them for cheap and I just need to be able to see something at a little bit of a ways away. So you're saving a whole ton of money in these 2 items, hundreds of dollars, as opposed to just buying one 8 times magnification rangefinder, for example. All right, next would be water, and maybe this is even one of the more important ones, but the ability to have water and rehydrate yourself is mandatory. Now, you can spend a crazy amount of money on water supply and having a water plan. Go check out Cana Provisions water plan. They actually have a PDF that explains how you can actually organize and plan varying levels of water preparedness. But if you want to start at the most basic level, you could just keep a clean water bottle and have another one that is dirty for collection. And then for $24, you can go get a water decon kit from Cana or from our website. We sell these too. And you actually have the ability to collect, purify, filter, all of it with something like this. You could spend a few extra dollars and get a $30 life straw. Now this is cool enough to actually hook onto the end of a water bottle and then you can drink straight through it. The reason that that's important is because you don't want to be finding a water supply where everyone is trying to go as well and putting your face down in the water. So at least with these items, even just these 2, you could have a short supply, but a supply of being able to collect and filter and purify some of your own water. Next would be a poncho of some kind or a way to generate some shelter. Now, in an urban area, you're probably gonna have some shelter and that's awesome. But if you wanna be able to collect some of your own rainwater that's not running off of the roof, some form of a small tarp would be phenomenal. Now, this one is another Temu Tactical for $15. And just in a little bit of playing around that I have used this for about 1.5 years, it's still doing a good job. Some of the holes have ripped off, some of the spots where you can actually tie it down with 550 cord. It's popped off and it's starting to rip, but in the grand scheme of things, this is still a functional piece of tarp for 15 bucks. Next, I would ensure that you have a line kit of some kind. So this is 550 cord, which is military strength 550 cord. But if you go over to Home Depot, you can go buy a mess of not 550 cord. It's probably 200 cord or something like that. So it doesn't actually have as much cordage on the inside. It's not gonna be quite as strong, but if you are trying to go on a budget, you still need some form of a line kit. Now, the next and last thing that I would say that would be a really good call would be an energy boost. As funny as it sounds, energy drinks are very expensive. You could go buy pure honey in small little packets like this, and they taste delicious. And yes, they absolutely give you a form of an energy boost without that hard crash. Now, when you add all this up, if I were to be working just off of a TAPS rig and a backpack that I already own with these items that I've talked about mixed in, you're coming in at about 280 bucks for a fairly reasonable stepping off point as far as kit goes. No, you can't access everything super fast. It'd be really nice to have a compass, but man, if you don't have a whole ton of gear, staying fairly close to home and pretty local, as well as running around with a team of people, would be mandatory, not optional. That being said, armor is a really, really good call. So let's talk about a rig like this real quick. So if we're talking about armor, which already tends to weigh a fair amount, the comfort factor of your carrier is gonna have huge ramifications, especially if you're wearing plates for an extended period of time. Now, I have owned inexpensive, low quality, low design when it comes to carriers itself, and I have had some nicer ones like Spirit Systems or Cry JPCs, and I can tell you that when you put on a quality plate carrier like a Cry AVS, you already go, I can see why people can live, it's still fairly uncomfortable, but I can see why people can live for hours or days in armor because the design is just superior. Now, yes, this does hold plates, but this is quite uncomfortable. I've worn this walking around the house. The wife thought I was crazy, but I had to get a little bit of time with it. I've worn it while cleaning up the shop back at home. I've worn it on the range, and I can tell you that it is simply not comfortable. And what do you expect for $30? There's another really concerning point to this, which is the fact that the shoulder straps are only held by this piece of Velcro, which is exposed. And yep, I could take some electrical tape and wrap it around in hopes that it actually stays where it's supposed to, but I don't have any shoulder straps that are keeping this Velcro from just popping off. So if a rifle sling catches it, if I catch something in an urban area like this whole plate carrier could fairly easily just take a jump right off of me. The armor itself, how cheap do we go while still trying to save money? If you're buying armor, this is one point where I would say it's a non-negotiable. Steel body armor is, in my mind, not worth the weight or the quality. I know that they're coming out with all these different forms of coatings and things to try and protect against frag and spall, but at the end of the day, if you're going to be committing to wearing armor, you are going to be slower because you're carrying more weight. You're gonna wanna buy something quality, and there are crazy price points that you can buy with armor, but some of the cheapest stuff that I would still consider buying that is still quality would be RMA. They are a sponsor of the video, but we approached them saying, yes, we're gonna be talking about them. And they said, yes, we'd be happy to sponsor one of these videos. So they actually just came out with a plate that is their XRT plate. And you can buy it in a swimmer or a shooter's cut. They're $200 per plate. And for the weight to cost and protection ratio, they're kind of hitting that price point where they're very competitive as far as price go. But they're quality enough to actually work without being a crazy weight, super heavy. So if you are gonna go buy some cheap plates, it's probably what I would be using. In here, I actually have some of their level 4 plates that they sent to us to play with a while back. And while they are heavy, they're quite a bit less expensive. So when it comes to armor, I'll finish up by saying this. You should be, the typical school of thought is you should be wearing the level plates with the kind of ammunition that you are carrying. So you need to be able to defeat at least what it is that you're carrying. So level 4s in this for 5.56, kind of unnecessary. I could probably jump down to a level 3 or level 3+. All right, pistols and or sidearms. There's definitely a time and a place, especially here in theoretically fallen America, where your sidearm may be your primary. You don't have a rifle with you. Maybe you're just walking around trying to protect yourself. Maybe you're going somewhere trying to do a little bit of recon, but I am just not willing to go ultra cheap to the like Sky pistols or SCCY, whatever that brand was, the ones that are like $150 pistols, high points, things like that. I can't get my mind there. I'm not willing to do that. So I opted instead to go with a law enforcement trade-in $400 Glock 17. Now, another spot that you don't want to save money or too much money is to be a test subject on something like this. I have some serious concerns with this. Holy cow, dude. Now I'm Israeli carry. I'm done. Not only does it start to bend and fold in, really like old school leather, they also have these snaps. And it causes you to just be so terrified, at least it does for me, to put that gun away with one in the chamber. And even still, it's really, really concerning just because this could very easily go into the trigger guard. This is supposed to be a universal, so it's supposed to take really any gun. But man, with the way that it wraps around your stomach or around your hips, it wants to ride up on you while you're running or walking. I would not be willing to even run around with something like this with a quality gun, let alone something like a 320, which is expensive, but now you got a hand grenade sitting on your hip. For 400 bucks, yes, this is about the same price point as the rifle. But man, I would way rather go spend $50 on a Safariland holster or a used Kydex holster from someone like Tier 1 Concealed or really any other brand. If I'm gonna have an outside the waistband holster, I really want a locking feature. And something like this is where it starts to get into the dangerous, too cheap for me. So if you're gonna be spending some money on a handgun, you're either pulling it out because your rifle is down, horrible scenario, or it is the only gun that you have on you, you don't have a rifle, and you do need it to be somewhat quality, but buying a used law enforcement trade-in $400 Glock is still a great way to go. That's where I draw the line. All right, next we have the helmet. We're unfortunately living in a world now where night vision and or thermal is kind of a non-negotiable. You need to be able to have that capability to some degree. And if your goal is to save money on the helmet in order to be able to afford night vision, it's honestly not a bad way to go. It's a great place to start out. And so here's what I did with mine. I actually took my old longboard helmet, which had a hard shell, which means that I can actually take a shroud, this piece right here, and screw it in myself, spend $80 on a Wilcox Amazon mount, so it's a knockoff, and then with a blend, probably this 14 is probably priced at about $1,800 now that Drew's dropped it and damaged it. Sorry, Drew. You can save a lot of money on building out a helmet like this. Now, you're still gonna have to run your Ear Pro under the helmet. It's not preferable, but it is very doable. In order to actually get those ears to fit into this dead space, I had to actually carve out some of the space in the foam itself. I had to move around some of the pads here and place those in here, but all things considered, this is still a functional helmet. Now, I still have that GoPro mount on there from when I was actually longboarding and skating around. I had a $25 VIP light, so this does IR, green and green strobe, and then for a counterweight, just like we explained in our helmet video, I just took a Ziploc bag with dirt and then have a chem light back here in case I do need to crack it. It's pretty functional. Now, you don't need to have a light like this for small tasks, but because I had an extra Princeton Tech line around, I threw that on there just as a proof of concept. Is it comfortable? Not nearly as comfortable as something high quality like an Ops Core or a Team Wendy that's sized to you. But man, if you need to have the ability to run night vision, you do not need to go spend crazy amounts of money on even just a bump helmet to host your night vision. You could even go cheaper and get something like a Skull Crusher, but at the end of the day, I want some noggin protection just because there's so much stuff in dilapidated homes like this where you hit your head on a low beam in the middle of the night. I want to have some protection to some degree, and man, I also have some night vision capabilities here too. It's pretty cool. Now, when it comes to Ear Pro itself, I have played with a bunch of the Howard lights, the like cheap $20, $25 ones. And the reason why I don't have any to demo is because they have broken. It's just a matter of time until they do fall apart and break. If you were to get something like Safarilands, Ops Cores, Peltors, those do last significantly longer, and that's part of the cost. Not to mention the fact that you have comms capabilities. If I was really trying to save money, I'd get some of those Surefire in-ear Ear Pro. Don't like the foamies, but the Surefire ones do stay in my ears, and that's probably the baseline of where I would actually start. But let's talk about comms for a minute. So I do think that it is valuable to have comms to some degree. Now, depending on who it is that you're going up against, you do need to consider the fact that everyone, if you do not have encrypted radios, and probably even if you do, is going to be able to track your comms, whether it is a Baofeng or actually just an iPhone, whether you're sending emails, texts, signal messages, or talking on something like this. Now, if I was going to be carrying a Baofeng that was programmed and all my buddies could talk, or I was even just listening in to some of the weather, because you do need to pay attention to what's going on around you, I would have a cardinal rule that myself and my buddies would absolutely adhere to. Number one, your Baofeng does not go on unless it is an absolute emergency and you're needing to listen in, or you're sending in information to say, I know I'm about to die because I'm talking on this radio, but here's what's going on, just so you guys know how to avenge me, or go pick up my loot, or something like that. And as far as iPhones are concerned, there's one more cardinal rule. You are either literally throwing this in the river, or it is living in a Faraday bag. So this would be a non-negotiable for me as far as kit goes. I would not be buying a cheap, inexpensive, I hope it works style Faraday bag. I would be making sure that if you happen to have a smart device of any kind, even if it's a watch, it must go in a quality Faraday bag. Silent is a sponsor of ours, and a part of the reason why we really like them is because they are used by the US government. They are not the cheapest out there, but if you are ensuring that no signal is getting out or you're being tracked via your smart device, that is rule number one. Now, all that being said, I have played with Baofengs, and I know that a lot of people dog on them. I don't know enough about radios to say, here's why they're garbage. I just know that they drain batteries really fast. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't.
Sometimes maybe good, sometimes maybe.
But if you happen to have one, I wouldn't be throwing it away. I'd just be making sure that it is not your primary form of communication. This would be all the way down on your pace plane, and this would be your emergency form of communication. All right, next, masks. I think a lot of people really underestimate how valuable and necessary something like a mask is going to be. So look at times of conflict, whether it's back to the Portland riots in 2020, all the way to times of conflict elsewhere in the world where there really is like civil war happening. Area denial, whether it's with CS gas or burning tires, is very, very common. And keeping things out of your lungs for longevity, keeping you from getting sick, is going to be incredibly necessary. Otherwise, you're not going to be around long enough to actually use any of this other gear. So at a base level would just be protecting your lungs with a respirator. You could go spend 20 bucks and go get a painter's mask from Lowe's or Home Depot. Now, I got to shoot with this a little bit, and when you start combining it with eye pro, ear pro, and a helmet, and then you get down to a rifle that has a fairly low or lower 1/3 height dot, this starts popping a seal fairly quickly. The filters are starting to be pushed up against the side of the stock, and I can absolutely tell that there's cool, fresh air coming in on the side. Now, this was not originally designed to be a shooter's mask. If you are just walking into a building and you're wanting to protect yourself, it's a great place to start, but it is not a long-term solution. You could even jump up to something like an old school gas mask, and because this mask does have a NATO size filter on here, you could in theory put a different fresh filter on this, and it's gonna help you some. Now you're starting to protect your eyes and your face a little bit better than something like a half mask, and I guess you could say it was designed to be shot in, but it's not going to be nearly as comfortable as spending, yes, more money and going up to the $200 price point and getting a miter. So something like this is designed to be able to drink through it. You have a filter offset on one side. It could be swapped over to the other side in case you're wrong-handed. And that's where it's really, you start thinking about the ecosystem of your rifle, the height of the optic, your helmet, and then the masks themselves. Now, sticking with the idea of budget, is this going to be better than nothing? 100%. Yes, absolutely. I would take some time to evaluate what your concerns may be. So chemicals near you, whether there's food operating plants, if someone's doing serious industrial metal working, what if that burns? Or what if it starts to decay and it's not being taken care of? What particulates in the air am I really, really concerned about? And then try to find some filters that are actually going to do a better job of defeating some of that. We also did a video just playing with simple masks like this around CS gas, and I can tell you that having a particulate filter just around your mouth and your nose helps a ton. It's not going to help your eyes, but if you are running or walking or driving and trying to get away, having something is certainly better than nothing. Again, it's just not going to be nearly as comfortable or as efficient when you start incorporating all of the other gear that you need to consider.
Hey, Josh, what about medical?
I have something to say about medical. Do not cheap out on medical. If you're pulling out medical, it's already a really bad day. Car accident, someone just got shot, I don't care. Do not cheap out on medical. Spend your money on medical before you go buy a bike helmet night vision or a red dot. Run irons, but please, for the love of God, do not cheap out on medical. There you go, put that in your video. All right, finally we have the apparel. You're just gonna wanna make sure that you have quality outdoor gear. Now there is value in having some uniformity among your teams, but once again, if we look over at Ukraine and Gaza, they can't always get M81 or multicam, and everyone is wearing multicam all across the world these days. So they're starting to resort to having colored tape or ribbons for actually identifying friend or foe. So if you're just wearing some quality outdoor gear, whether that's like Vertex pants or you're going over to Goodwill and you're just buying some good outdoor gear, that's gonna get you a long way. As far as things like gloves, man, you can go over to Home Depot or Lowe's and get some $10 mechanics gloves, buy 2 pairs of them and let them wear out over time. You don't have to get the super fancy, whatever the brand is, just to get some gloves. Now the quality gloves probably are gonna last a little bit longer, but in my experience, gloves always wear out before any other kind of gear that we're wearing. So if you get a quality field top like this M81 field top, it's gonna last you and it's gonna do exactly what you need. And with all that being said, let's wrap this up and rehash some of the where you can save some money and some non-negotiables. All right, to wrap this up, guys, first and foremost, you have to remember that training and getting out with the boys and exercising with the gear that you own is always gonna come first before you're spending money on just stuff that you're not actually gonna train in. The guy who owns things like this, a PSA rifle, a $30 plate carrier, and the willingness to go learn is always going to outperform the guy who just sits on the computer and leaves dumb comments. So if you're one of those people, just do us a favor and leave a dumb comment so we know who you are. The non-negotiables, let's hit those one more time. The ability to refilter and create more pure water, that's a must. Number 2 would be a minimum of 6 mags plus 1 in the gun, so 7 in total. I only have 3 on body right now, which is why I have a backpack with extra equipment. A Faraday bag of some kind. Otherwise, you are not permitted to bring your phone, your laptop, your smartwatch, any of those things. Faraday bags are a must. Beyond that, guys, I'm curious what you would consider to be absolutely mandatory. Things like white lights on your rifles and pistols. Is night vision now considered mandatory? Or can you be an asset without night vision? We actually did a full video on that and we made some interesting arguments. We have to say a huge thank you to Patreon for making content like this possible every week. They get access to us first and foremost when they send in a question. We get back to them before we get back to anyone else. They also get to see content like this before it goes on YouTube, and it's ad-free. If you guys do want to support us, go check out our website. We have some merch and some products that we actually really appreciate, just like the Canaan Provisions products. And without further ado, guys, have a good weekend and go outside.
Where's my hand up? I have an idea. Lay back down.
Oh, hold on. Let's get on the back of my way.
What's going on here, boys? I'm trying to get a Ziploc bag of blood in the right spot.
Yeah, there we go. Okay.